Welcome to AfriFacts, where we uncover the real stories shaping Africa's present and future. Today, we're diving into a controversial decision that has sent shockwaves across the continent, the US President Donald Trump's latest policy move that directly impacts Africa. Why did the US suddenly cut aid to South Africa? What are the hidden motives behind this decision? What are the reactions of the South African government, African Union, and other African countries? And most importantly, how does this affect Africa's future on the global stage? Stay with us as we break it all down, exposing the facts the mainstream media won't tell you. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update on Africa's biggest stories. And if you find this information valuable, give this video a thumbs up. It helps us bring you more insightful content. Now, let's get into it. In recent developments, President Donald Trump's administration has enacted policies that have significant implications for Africa, particularly concerning foreign aid and international relations. One of the most impactful actions is the suspension of US foreign aid to South Africa, a decision that has garnered widespread attention and debate. A closer look at the executive order. On February 7, 2025, President Trump signed an executive order titled Addressing Egregious Actions of the Republic of South Africa. This order mandates the suspension of all US aid and assistance to South Africa. The administration's justification centers on South Africa's Expropriation Act 13 of 2024, which permits the government to seize land without compensation under specific circumstances. The US government contends that this act discriminates against the white minority, particularly Afrikaner farmers, and violates principles of equal opportunity. Additionally, the order criticizes South Africa's foreign policy positions, notably its accusations against Israel in the International Court of Justice and its renewed relations with Iran. What are the implications for South Africa? The suspension of aid is poised to have profound effects on South Africa's socio-economic landscape. US assistance has historically supported various sectors, including health, education, and infrastructure. The withdrawal of this support could hinder ongoing projects and strain resources, especially in underserved communities. Moreover, the executive order includes provisions to facilitate the resettlement of Afrikaner farmers in the United States, a move that could lead to a significant demographic shift and potential economic challenges within South Africa's agricultural sector. What is the broader impact on US-Africa relationship? This policy decision reflects a broader shift in the US approach to Africa under the current administration. The emphasis appears to be moving away from traditional development assistance towards a more transactional relationship, focusing on strategic interests and bilateral agreements. Critics argue that such an approach may undermine long-standing partnerships and erode the goodwill established through decades of collaboration. Furthermore, the suspension of aid to South Africa could set a precedent for US interactions with other African nations, potentially leading to a re-evaluation of alliances and foreign policy strategies across the continent. In response to the US President Donald Trump's executive order suspending aid to South Africa and offering refugee status to Afrikaners, the South African government and various groups have expressed strong opposition and provided clarifications. What is South African government's stance? President Cyril Ramaphosa, in his State of the Nation address, indirectly addressed Trump's actions by asserting, "We will not be bullied." He emphasized South Africa's resilience and commitment to its sovereignty and constitutional democracy. Ramaphosa's administration has clarified that the Expropriation Act 13 of 2024 is designed to address historical land disparities and does not permit arbitrary land seizures. The government maintains that no land has been confiscated under this law and that it aims to promote equitable land distribution while respecting property rights. What is Afrikaner community's response to Trump's action? Representatives of South Africa's white Afrikaner minority have rejected Trump's offer of resettlement in the U.S. Organizations such as the Solidarity Movement and AfriForum have stated their commitment to remain in South Africa. They acknowledge disagreements with certain government policies, but emphasize their dedication to building a future within the country. These groups also expressed concern that cutting U.S. aid could adversely affect vulnerable South Africans and clarified that they did not seek such sanctions. The African Union (AU) has criticized the executive order, stating that it undermines the sovereignty of South Africa and sets a concerning precedent for international relations. The AU emphasized the importance of respecting member states' domestic policies and warned against external interference that could destabilize the region. What are the reactions from African governments? Several African governments have voiced solidarity with South Africa, viewing the U.S. action as an overreach into a sovereign nation's affairs. They have expressed apprehension that such policies could be extended to other nations, potentially affecting bilateral relations and aid agreements across the continent. What is the impact on aid-dependent countries? The suspension of U.S. foreign aid has had immediate and severe repercussions for several African countries. For instance, Malawi, which relies heavily on foreign assistance, has faced significant challenges due to the aid freeze. The sudden withdrawal of support has disrupted essential services, including healthcare and education programs, exacerbating existing vulnerabilities. What should Africans do now? The recent U.S. policy shift towards Africa, exemplified by the suspension of aid to South Africa, raises critical questions about the future of international cooperation and support for development initiatives on the continent. It is imperative for stakeholders, including policymakers, civil society organizations, and the global community, to engage in informed dialogue and advocacy to address these challenges. By staying informed and participating in discussions, we can work towards policies that promote equitable development and uphold the principles of international solidarity. Resisting Trump's anti-Africa policies, a call for Pan-African unity. Africa, we are at a crossroads. Once again, we see Western powers imposing their will on our continent, this time through the US President Donald Trump's executive order cutting aid to South Africa. But let's be clear, this is bigger than just one country. It is a challenge to Africa's sovereignty, a test of our unity, and a call for a new direction. Trump's policies towards Africa have consistently been built on exploitation, control, and punishment rather than genuine partnership. Whether it's blocking aid, restricting trade, or interfering in African affairs, these moves are designed to keep Africa dependent rather than independent. But we have the power to change this. Today, we're going to talk solutions, Pan-African solutions that will ensure Africa never has to beg or rely on Western approval again. What are the solutions? 1. African self-reliance, breaking the chains of dependency. For decades, Africa has been conditioned to depend on Western aid, but what has it brought us? Political interference, economic instability, and a cycle of poverty. We must shift from aid reliance to self-reliance. How do we achieve this? By investing in African agriculture and industry. Instead of relying on Western imports, Africa must strengthen its own industries, particularly in agriculture, technology, and manufacturing. Nations like South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya have the potential to become hubs of innovation, but only if we stop looking outward for solutions and start building within. A united African currency, the CFA franc is still controlled by France, and the US dollar dominates global trade. Africa must push for a single Pan-African currency, controlled by Africans, to protect our economies from Western manipulation. Strengthening intra-African trade, with the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, in place, we now have the opportunity to trade among ourselves rather than depend on foreign markets. Let's buy African, sell African, and build Africa. Secondly, by strengthening African diplomacy, we should set our own terms. Trump's executive order targeting South Africa is proof that the West still sees Africa as a continent that should take orders. This must stop. Africa must stand firm in the global arena by speaking with one voice. The African Union must become a strong and independent force that represents all 54 African nations, not just a puppet of Western interests. When one African nation is targeted, all African nations should respond as one. By expanding global partnerships, instead of looking to the US and Europe, Africa should strengthen ties with Latin America, Asia, and the Caribbean, regions that share a history of resistance against Western imperialism. By demanding respect, not charity, Africa should not be begging for aid. We should be negotiating fair trade deals, equal diplomatic relationships, and policies that benefit our people. Thirdly, protecting African resources from foreign exploitation. The West does not want an independent Africa because an independent Africa means a powerful Africa. From our gold, diamonds, and oil to our rare minerals used in smartphones and electric cars, Africa is the richest continent on Earth. Yet, our people remain poor. This is by design. We must nationalize African resources. African governments must take back control of their natural wealth. No more Western corporations profiting off African labor while our people starve. Promote African innovation. Instead of exporting raw materials, we must develop local industries that process and refine African resources for African consumption. Educate and mobilize our youth. Young Africans must understand that the future is in their hands. Let's teach Pan-African history, economic independence, and political resistance in our schools. Finally, the power is in our hands. Africa, this is not the time to bow down, it is the time to rise. Trump's policies may seem like a challenge, but they are actually an opportunity for us to reclaim our dignity, our economy, and our future. We don't need America's approval. We don't need their aid. We need each other. If you believe in a strong and independent Africa, share this video. Let the world know that Africa is awake. And don't forget to subscribe to AfriFacts for more content that tells Africa's true story. The time is now. Africa First, Africa United, Africa Rising.